Global Indian Network. Print, TV, events, podcasts. Find out more at globalindianseries.com.
Welcome to the Global Indian Podcast, home to the greatest conversations and the official platform for people of Indian origin. Yes, let's face it, we are everywhere. Now, you know, on our weekly show, we plunge into the human experience behind our perceptions of identity, take a second look at the countries we now call home, and tackle the big conversations. This week, we are celebrating 2021, and as 2022 edges towards us, we're going to look back and reflect on the lessons of the human expressions we have learnt in our 52 Shades of Brown conversations. As always, I'd like to say a massive thank you to you, the audience, because with your help, we've been able to plunge deeper and build a living encyclopedia of people just like us. We've been able to reshift the very notions of identity together, been able to celebrate and cry, and create more empathy in the world. It has been a remarkable year, I must admit. Before we kick off on the show, I'd like to say a massive thank you to all our dear supporters and sponsors, many of which you hear from soon. And if you too would like to be part of our 50 Shades of Brown stories, well, it couldn't be easier. Simply come to the website, which is www.globalindianseries.com, where you can see this podcast and the entire repertoire of personal conversations so far. I hope you enjoy this session.
Hi, my name is Divya and I'm co-founder of the Global Indian Podcast. Before you get to today's show, I've got a quick favour to ask. If you've been enjoying our conversations, I'd love if you could take just 1 minute to leave us a review on the platform that you're listening to us on and share our work to friends and family. It helps us out a lot. Word of mouth is the primary way that we grow. Thanks for your continued support.
Hi, my name is Nestor Alfred, CEO of St. Lucia Citizenship by Investment. Think freedom. What comes to mind? Freedom to explore, to travel to any destination for work or play. Or is it freedom of expression? Being surrounded by the globally minded, those who care for society and environment. Every year, people from around the world apply for St. Lucian citizenship because they realize that real freedom is based on choice. Discover more about St. Lucian citizenship and how it's helping global Indians achieve more.
Hello, my name is Daniel Trasa and I'm Dean of Nova School of Business and Economics in Carcavelos, Portugal, one of Europe's leading business schools. I'm proud to be of Indian origin and I invite you to discover these podcasts, which will look to redefine the impact that Indians and their descendants are doing all over the world. In behalf of Nova School of Business and Economics, I wish you a great 2021.
My name is Chitra Stern and I am a proud Global Indian Ambassador and CEO of Martiniale Resorts and Martiniale Residences. We pride ourselves on the journeys that define a community, and our developments bring people together. Did you know that over 70,000 people just like us call Portugal home? The Global Indian journey has brought people together in a meaningful way, and on behalf of all of us at Martiniale, we want to thank you for joining us in these remarkable conversations. We look forward to seeing you here in Lisbon post-COVID. Have a great day.
And just move. Get up and just move. Get up and just move. Get up and just move.
Welcome back. You're going to listen to me for the next couple of minutes, but I'll make it... Welcome back. You're going to be with me for the next couple of minutes, Rajan Nazran. Now, as you know, I'm the proud Chief Explorer for the Global Indian series. The whole reason for the Global Indian project was really to plunge deeper and to have a look at what is identity. Now, we often say, well, India means something to us, but the real question is, do we mean anything to it, and do we mean anything to each other? And even deeper is, what is it? Now, the reality is, I like to think that our skin color, our choice of religion, culture, all of that is just an arbitrary factor to our humanness. It shouldn't define our expression in this globe, because ultimately we're not born in a country, we're born on a planet. And we owe it to ourselves, almost as sentient beings, to really understand more about the world at large. But to do that, we need to really understand the human experiences behind it and to re-question and analyze how that makes an impact on us and all of us, and the issues such as compassion, empathy, the values that make us what we are. So as 2021 edges towards an end, let's look back and reflect on the lessons that we've learnt for the year. To make sure that we use these lessons, I'm going to take you back on a trip on memory lane to look at some of the key themes covered. So, in this year, in our 52 Shades of Brown conversations, we travelled to over 20 destinations and brought together every echelon of society in a powerful demonstration of togetherness. In fact, over 50 countries. Whilst you listen to this, audiences over 50 countries are listening to these conversations because it's the first time ever that we're building up this epilogue, this encyclopaedia that actually looks at people without fear or favour. Now, let me kick off first on our website. We kick off the globalindianseries.com website, official platform now, and you'll see that we don't just have podcasts. We have our partners in parenting, for example, so partners in upbringing. We have our Global Indian podcast, but we also have articles, many of which are actually written by journalists and Global Indian correspondents, many of which actually place their lives on the line this year in some of the most difficult situations imaginable. Case example, this year you would know that incredible amounts of violence took place in South Africa, in Durban. We actually had on-ground reporters taken to the streets during the chaos that emerged. They actually put their lives on the line by patrolling with local residences in the heat of criminality, and in some cases they were targeted because of the truth they spoke out of on our platform. Many of you remember the podcast that we did, where you could hear gunshots in the back, you could hear the sense of fear in people's voices. There were social media posts put forward saying Asian Indian women should be raped. There was signposts, people shouting out in streets, "One bullet, one Indian." Whilst all this happened, whilst over 300 people were murdered, shops that were looted, destroyed, petrol bombed, 40 billion rand worth of damage in the space of a week, the army of South Africa and the police of South Africa stood on the sidelines and watched for over 4 days. It was a horrific example of justice that was skin deep or pigmentation caused. It was a very worrying case, I think, for a lot of people, because we actually realised that at the same moment, the international media was silent, and the silence was deafening. Nothing was being spoken about. But our journalists on the ground made sure that the story never disappeared, and we worked tirelessly throughout that time to make sure we record everything so future generations will always understand what happened and that the truth will prevail. You also know that we had reporters in India. He spoke openly about the worrying case of COVID and the corruption that took place. We had others that were undercover for months during the farmers' protest, where over 250 million people protested together in a sign of saying a better India for all. Our journalists risked their lives and their livelihoods to take the Global Indian call to action, to talk about the human side of the story. What they uncovered were disturbing elements that I know undoubtedly in the future will make us question the real reasons and the shifting sands of identity. We took on discussions that looked at notions of sexuality this year, gender and trauma. There's conversion therapy. Our Global Indian Ambassador, His Royal Highness Manvinder Singh Goyal, opened up about the sexual paradox of the region and his own journey. We also had discussions from both India and Pakistan, from activists and entrepreneurs that looked to change the attitudes around sexuality, around gender, and actually re-question the British attitudes that were actually implemented there that changed the very course of nature for many of the people there. This year, on the podcast, we had a marvellous array of people from every echelon of society coming together in a powerful display of togetherness. We had a session with heads of states, billionaires, presidential aspirants to look at situations and issues concerning the fate of civilization as we know it. We also had conversations that looked at the big misconceptions people have about money, happiness, and what they thought was a sense of belonging. Something that we all truly crave as human beings, validation. Our global Indian ambassadors, people such as Vikram Vij, who's a former Dragon's Den investor in Canada, and our global Indian ambassador, Lord Rami Range in the UK, opened up about some of their own struggles, regardless of wealth or perceptions. Likewise with friends of the platform such as Vijay Patel. We travelled and we celebrated music from India, Pakistan and Canada. We questioned marriage and love with fly-on-the-wall discussions with Sunny, Spiti and Pidu, a polyamorous triple. A discussion that drew audiences to a deeper perspective of the human need to love, be loved, and that validation, that whole process. It was such a remarkable insight. And something that I think made people really, really look at their own relationships. We looked at death and our perceptions of human identity through lives worth living. Took a plunge almost in this metaphysical universal thoughts, from questions of borders and nationality with India's first alien hunter. We re-questioned drugs, society and God with the real life medicine man of Costa Rica. We even looked at the real life account of a coma survivor whose experience, I believe, was relatable right the way across the corners of the planet, regardless of religion and denomination. This year, we drove down tunnels of thoughts that's changed every element of our perceived, learnt behaviour, with insights of people just like you, in countries right the way across the globe. And we created a new scope of identity. We challenged the fabric of the international media. We forced through discussions of equality, from interviews in cricket with John Holder to belief, religion and Britishness with Lord Singh. We almost unpicked this bipolar world where stories that seem to matter are always colourblinded to perceived opposites. I like to think that not only did we break the mould together, but in doing so we have begun to liberate an entire generation of people. People who are culturally curious, who see the arbitrary factors of skin colour and religious ideology as not personal brands anymore, that define their only source of human expression. This year, regardless whether it was from Iran through to Malawi, from Bollywood through to the jungles of Costa Rica, we have taken you and us on an exploration that I believe will change the fate of our community many generations to come. Some of the biggest themes I believe that's come out of 2021 is our innate ability for compassion as a community. The reality is, compassion is a strange one. And those who are spiritually or religiously bent will like to proclaim that they feel those feelings under deep prayer or meditation or choice of in their religious abodes. But it's quite easy to feel compassion when everything around you is relatively at ease. But for many of our community, this year, they were faced with absolute cruelty, with violence. They were made political pariahs. In some cases, they felt the world turned against them. And in those moments, the darkest depths of the human imagination, where you are facing, in many cases, sheer annihilation, they were able to sum up compassion for the people who were actually doing it against them. That to me is remarkable. A case, for example, is South Africa. During these heated riots, where 40 billion rands worth of damage was done, where the police and the army just stood still for 4 days, where fires ravaged right the way across the city. Gurdwara, temples, mosques, churches, people where our community go in and pray and celebrate, open up their doors to help feed those in need. we did a great conversation with people from the Sikh faith in South Africa. And the lady said she knew, and many of the people there, that they were feeding the same people who actually destroyed their livelihoods. But there was something there that they knew that had to be on the right side. And there's something that is innately human there. We saw the same thing happen in India during COVID. Oxygen tanks that were being provided by another podcast guest that we had on, Ravi Singh, who in most accounts on the Indian media is seen as being a pariah. The same voice, the same individual, helped galvanize change by providing oxygen tanks over there. They set up free kitchens to help support people who couldn't go to work, who were on the breadline, who faced certain starvation. We saw the same thing with those who were in the farmers' protests, feeding the street kids of Delhi, helping people. Moments of compassion that I believe sums up what 2021 should be. But there's another word that I believe also sums it up, and the word I'm going to use is nationalism. But I want to take a spin. Now, we know what's currently taking place in India, US, here in the UK, with the new Nationalities and Borders Bill that can actually impact up to 6 million people. Many people actually are from the Roma community, a community who claim Indian origin. They're over 1,000 years from India. Some of the language is very similar to that of Punjabi, in fact. Something we'll go into next year, I'm sure. But this idea of nationalism, national borders, national identity, has really challenged the way that we looked at the world in 2021, from South Africa, from the violence that erupted there, through to obviously cases in Fiji and Malaysia. I think 2021 could be a turning point for us, because when we look back, we should look back in a way that's wary for the future. If we leave ideals of national borders, national identity in the hands of elected parliamentarians and politicians who realistically could be outvoted in the next 5 years. Why would we hang our whole identity as a nation to just the hands of a few? Sounds ridiculous to me. And I think that's what 2021 should sum up for. The fact that now finally, as communities go, we come together and we can change the very fabric of how people look at nations and borders, and change the way that skin colour is representative in those countries. Again, we're human first, skin colour second. The roundup of the year would not be complete if I didn't talk about the wonderful work of our Ambassadors Programme. Really pleased that this year we launched our Ambassadors Programme, and now we have over 23 ambassadors around the globe. These include heads of states, former ministers, current ministers, members of parliament, members of the House of Lords. In the UK, we got members of royal family, datos in Malaysia, high-profile entrepreneurs. In 23 countries, musicians, actors, activists, business personalities, every single stratosphere have come together for the Global Indian Series to help propel a future where all voices matter, that we start to build up bridges rather than divide. A world where identity of Indianness is no longer held by a flag or by an individual, but is held in the hearts of communities across the globe without fear or favour. Bearing in mind, when I say Indianness, you all know, I'm not talking about just India. This is prior to the British going in. Other areas that I think many of the audience don't know is that this has actually been a huge labour of love. All the articles that you see, we've got people in to help out. All we're writing up. When I say we, me and Divya write it up. She's my proofreader along with my daughter. The podcast I do every single week is a labour of love to record these stories, to make sure that our voices never die out. I remember growing up listening to my mum and my dad telling me their stories of how they came to the UK from India and Philippines respectively. Those stories stuck with me. And it was in the pursuit of recording those stories that I realised that it doesn't just benefit me, but it will benefit my children. And maybe my grandchildren and their children's children's. But that means nothing if it's only done for our own families. Ultimately, the world is our family, and we need to start recording our own stories, and this is what's really behind the Global Indian Series. We're non-religious, we're non-political, but we are open, and we realize the power that our platform has. So I'd like to say thank you to all the people that you guys don't normally see. My family, behind the scenes, you see me working crazy hours of the days, getting all these things put together. And some of the support that we're now getting in from countries and like-minded people who believe in the work that we do and now starting to donate towards the cause. 2021 was a fantastic year. 2022 will be equally astonishing. But I'd like to end this podcast off for the year with a simple thing. So whether you listen to this now or in a month or in 5 years' time or 20 years' time, let me ask you a question. Indianness or sense of Indianness means something to you. But do you mean anything to it? If you don't, then this is the time that we start owning our own identity. All our voices matter. Culture, traditions can be challenged. We saw that with the introduction of the child marriage podcast that we did, and Naila is now one of our ambassadors here. But culture can be challenged. Traditions can be challenged. Identity can be challenged. But it takes us all to come together. It's not just about how others see us, but it's how we see ourselves that counts. But that power's in our hands. So, I look forward to continue the journey in 2022. That was my very long Jerry Springer moment. But I purged my soul towards the end. I look forward to being your guide in 2022 as we continue our journeys, build up our platform, do our docu-series, and expose you to some of the world's greatest individuals that you need to know more about. Until then, stay well.